have like a new market come online, or especially like a new continent has their first market come online, it rejigs the entire cannabis supply chain, because depending on where that country's strengths and skills are, it kind of fits into the supply chain and boots other people out. So for example, Germany was obviously taking most of their product from Canada at the beginning because they had to. And then as other countries have come online and legalized, now they're taking in product from other countries. Also, as Germany switches over to having their own social clubs, that will most likely decrease this, what was originally super huge demand we thought was going to have for medical, because people will be using social clubs instead. So to be honest, it's really difficult to predict what the trends will be. The trends are, as someone legalizes, stuff gets mixed up, basically. So Japan, for example, has got CBD apparently is like a big craze right now, and it's kind of, people are mentioning there might be some medical THC that will definitely affect how the market in Asia is handled. Countries that are in, that have a low cost of labor. So there's obviously certain countries in Africa and South America, and of course, Thailand is an example in Asia, where the low cost of labor has made people think that it would be good to cultivate there for either biomass production or premium flower production, because any of the super labor heavy processes that are being done in Germany and Canada, where the cost of labor is higher, could be saved, down here. But some of the disadvantages that could happen in these other continents is, for example, getting GMP certification. There aren't a ton of European GMP auditors hanging around in Thailand. In fact, when somebody wants an audit here, the wait time for a German auditor we've been quoted is about 18 months to 2 years. Now, by the time you get that audit, is Germany still going to be taking product? Maybe not if they have their own social clubs, right? And also in that 2-year period, how many other European countries are going to come online? So it's very difficult to really map out what the export situation is going to look like, who is going to be dominant in the supply chain for different things. It's something that's kind of ever evolving and changing. All I can really advise is to keep on top of the regulations as best as possible, to have, a really well thought out strategy to work on establishing really good partnerships, because partnerships are so important. Even if your product costs a little bit more money, but the partnership is strong and you're producing consistent quality product, the buyer will pay more. They will, they'll say, okay, look, I know you're 20% more expensive than this other company, but like, because you have a good track record and a good history, this is, who I want to stick with. So I think it's true of any industry, but in cannabis in particular, the bonds are like very strong. I think it's one of those things where it's like forged in fire. We've all been through a lot. So those of us that have been around for a while, that are like, kind of veterans at this point, we kind of stick together and we want to work with each other and we want to have, good business relationships with groups that we really trust. So, keep an eye out, keep, checking in on regulatory changes, make sure to be aware of what's going on. I know, for example, the US is a market where they don't, I think, pay a lot of attention to what's going on outside of the US. And to be fair, because they can't participate in the global market at this point in time, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't keep an eye on what's happening. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't keep up to date in what's coming up next. So one thing that I'm going to be doing is launching a podcast that we will also, I'm sure, have you on, but it will be talking about every market. So essentially, we're going to have every episode is a deep dive into not only what the regulations say in that market, but what's actually happening, because there's always a bit of a departure between the regulations and what's actually happening. Even in Germany, and I won't go into detail with that now because it's quite a long whole spiel, but here's what it says on paper, and here's what's actually going on. So we want to know what's actually happening in these markets and what people in that market think is going to happen, in the next 6 months to a year. So we're going to be doing, of course, the bigger markets, but I'm really keen to do the super small markets where they've got like one producer that's legal and it's like really tiny. And I think we also have to stop chasing the same markets. Like everyone who comes to me and says like, I want to sell product in Germany. I'm like, you're like the 85th person this month that's told me that. Only so many of you can. Okay. So let's look at some other options for you. Let's look at another place. We really have to look at the fact that it's going to be super saturated. Everything in Europe is going to be super saturated. The amount of people going in for GMP right now is crazy high. And if you're not in Europe yourself, it immediately puts you at a disadvantage because you're farther for the auditor to get to. And there's more of an established trust within Europe of buying other products from states and countries that are very close by that they can go and visit whenever they need to, or pop in for a surprise audit, right? It's a bit of a trek to, fly from, Germany all the way down to Thailand for a surprise visit to check on a supplier. So I think that it's really good to just keep as much of a pulse as you can and keep your strategy flexible and open for changes. And again, being ironclad and saying this is how it's going to be, this is how it's going to go, has never served anyone really well in cannabis.